Welcome back to the podcast. This is Indifferently Depraved Book Club. With me, as always, is Carla Workman.
Hello.
And I'm Penny Maple. This evening, we have not just a studio guest, but we have a guest co-host. Well, we're ready to give a warm welcome to Miss Nancy Bell.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, Nancy.
Big warm welcome to Nancy. I have podcasted with Nancy before, and it's a pleasure to have her join us tonight. So, Nancy, do you want to introduce the text that we are going to be talking about for our springboard this evening?
Oh, today we read this wonderful novel by Joyce Carol Oates called Zombie.
Now, from what I understand, you're not a fan of this work.
I couldn't even get halfway through it before I said, fuck this shit, I can't do it.
Now, this is only 170 pages, so...
Well, I was reading on my Kindle, and, it'll tell you how long it takes you to get through the book, and I started, and I'm like, oh, this is only a 2 hour and 15-minute read. This is awesome. The longer I kept going, it just kept going up, because I just couldn't turn the page. I just couldn't do it. I'm like, this is only going to get worse. I can't. Oh.
I want to start off by saying I read this book. I thought it was okay. I would give it like a C+, B-. I thought it was interesting just because Joyce Carol Oates, she is one of these American authors that's been writing for like 50, 60 years at this point. Unfortunately, I'm not very familiar with her body of work. The only thing I've ever read of hers is a short story before, but it made quite an impression on me, which is why I was interested in reading this book. She wrote a book called Blonde that's based on the life of Marilyn Monroe that is supposed to be some kind of masterpiece. I have not read it. If you are readers, Jesus fucking Christ. Well, you are readers. I hope that you're readers if you're listening to this.
Ideally.
Or maybe you're just a fan of us, and that's actually better than being a reader.
Yeah, we prefer fans of us to fans of reading.
Yeah.
Really.
Fuck a book.
Fuck us.
Yeah, fuck us.
You beat me to it.
So if you are a Joyce Carol Oates fan, let us know what you think about her work and recommend a better text to us. But
see, I liked it, guys. I liked it.
I liked it. I just thought it was a little bit desultory. I just didn't find it to be very sparky, zippy.
I am a grammar Nazi, and I get what she's going for. I get the style of writing, and I understand that it's not supposed to be, but I can't fucking stand it.
Okay, let's talk about that.
That's what I like about it. We got a hot topic on the podcast today.
So this is not written traditionally in the third person, sort of.
No.
Go ahead, Carla. Talk about it.
Well, I understand that alienates people. I get that. It can be hard to follow. People who are really into it find it distracting. And I understand that perspective. However, I like it better.
It's a very... It's distinctive narrative. It is very much supposed to be in the middle of this man's head.
It's like a journal.
Yes.
It's his journal.
But better than he could write because he's not a very smart person.
Right.
So it's really like a fly on the wall inside this man's skull.
And that's another thing I think about the criticism that it's overly reductionary, kind of like you were saying. I think, and what I like about what she does here, it's like the style of writing is part of the characterization of Quentin.
And I can read the journal style books. I mean, I've read Go Ask Alice and Jay's Journal. And, the books that are based off of that, I can read those. And even though they may not be as grammatically correct, they're still very easy to follow. And I get that this is a madman. My issue, though, is I just can't get past, and maybe it's the initials. Maybe that's what bothers me, is that you're not speaking in names. You're speaking in initials. So it's very easy for me to get confused. Who are we really talking about? Who is this? Who is QP? Are you still talking about, are you talking yourself in third person? What are you doing here? Like, I found myself getting actually angry trying to read it.
And I'll say, even if you didn't enjoy it, I think that a good work of art should evoke a strong reaction, even if it's not positive. Yeah. So give us an overview, Carla. So Quentin P.
He reminds everybody of a certain wonderful cannibal from Milwaukee that we all know.
Heaviest of the heavy hitters, Jeffrey Dahmer, and his quest to establish a zombie.
You think Dahmer's number one?
Bundy is right behind him, but Bundy predates him so much. And I think that Dahmer coming so, close in the 90s.
I think it's the eating people that fascinates everyone.
The Milwaukee Cannibal.
Yes.
The Milwaukee Cannibal. And this was in like the mid 90s. The fact that he was a queer.
He was so young, too. I don't know if that's what other people find striking about it.
He was a young, blonde. Like, I remember being like 12, 13 years old, I guess, when this went to shit.
Yeah, he was apprehended in 91.
Yeah, so I was 10 years old, 11 years old when he was on trial, and being like, that guy's attractive. Somebody who could pass through life if he tried, but he just he was not equipped to do that in any way. Like you're saying, he's young, he's blonde, he's an attractive white man, he ate young boys. It's very much making a splash, and that's happening in the 90s, so it's a lot more relevant than, Bundy in the 70s, Gacy in the 70s, Ed Gein back in the fucking mid 60s. Mm-hmm. Who's come to fruition since then? Green River Killer, but I just don't think BTK, that made a big splash too. But I think it is Dahmer's youth and relative attractiveness that really captured,
and the eating people
that really captured people's imaginations and kind of made him definitely at least the top 3 of the heavy hitters.
A Dahmer girl.
Dahmer, Bundy, Gacy. Even though BTK and Green River have been apprehended more recently, I think it's still Bundy, Dahmer, and Gacy that... Don't you? What do you think?
I'd have to throw Manson in that list somewhere. I mean, I know that he didn't... I guess it depends on what you believe.
Pop culture iconography wise, I agree with you.
Right.
He's one of the most recognizable. Everyone's familiar with his crimes.
But he's more of a cult leader. I think he did kill at least 1 or 2 people in there. I
don't think he killed anyone, but I think the common perception, like lay understanding of it, is that he's a murderer. Right. I think most people don't make the distinction.
Right. And he...
Even by a transitive property, he's a murderer.
Right.
Definitely.
And I mean, yes, he is more cult leader, and he is more down that path. But at the same time, he is lumped together as a serial killer because of the way that those people were killed. It's not like you're dealing with a mass suicide. It's not like you're dealing with any of those kinds of things. You're dealing with somebody who was like, hey, I'm going to brainwash you people, and you're going to go do my bidding for me, and you're going to go murder these people violently.
Them. Yes, I agree.
So, in a sense... You may not have had a hand in it, though. I'm totally with Penny. I think he did. I think at some point he's murdered somebody.
Yeah, not the Tate LaBianca murders, but what's the guy that is it Bobby Beausoleil?
Oh, okay.
Because he was present during that one. I think Tex Watson is the one that's technically on the books for killing Bobby Beausoleil. But I think Manson probably was more hands-on for that because he had to establish it. Since I was a teenager, that's how I've always read it.
Yeah, I understand. And I don't even necessarily disagree. My personal opinion is he's capable of getting other people to do it without having to do anything himself.
Absolutely. I would never suggest that he had a personal hand in the Tate LaBiancas. He was not present. He did not do that. That's why he is who he is and why he captured, the imagination of America, because
scarier really if he never killed anyone.
Yeah, because he got all these girls that were from good homes basically, to go out and do it for him.
Manson has always been my favorite, but I think that's why, because he was just, how the hell do you get people to do that? Like, how is that even possible?
Fuck, I can't get anyone to do shit for me.
No.
Right? I mean, I couldn't get my ex-husband to do jack shit, so how the fuck am I going to get a cult? Like, I don't understand.
It took me 2 months to get my gym to refund me.
You should have gotten Charles Manson on that.
He'd have gotten shit done.
He's dead.
Oh, may he rest in peace.
Yeah. He just actually, the judge decided his case recently and gave his body to his legal son or nephew?
I think it's a
nephew. So I guess the girl, what was her name? That girl that was pretending that she was in love with him and she was trying to marry him so she could get his body.
Oh yeah.
So she could put it on display after he died.
No, Charlie. I thought he did get married in prison.
No.
That never happened?
That is an urban legend, though. It was a story that was popularized. A lot of people say that, but it's not true.
3 years ago, this girl that looks like she could have been a Mansonite back in the day,
No, I remember that.
You remember her. I can't remember her fucking name. She was so close, man, so close. But he was like, nah, I don't need no fucking devil woman. It didn't work out for her.
Oh, classic Charles.
Or did it work out for her?
Well.
Let's really, which way are we going to weigh on that?
In the end, she got her name and her face in the paper, so good for her. But back to this book here and talking about Quentin P.
Yeah, Quentin, he's based on Jeffrey Dahmer. I think most people would argue that. I think when you read the book, it becomes pretty clear.
Oh, it was clear to me within the first, 3 or 4 chapters.
I don't think it's anything that Oates is cagey about. I think she's very upfront that this was an exploration of the Jeffrey Dahmer psyche.
And I like that part of the concept. And it's like I was saying, the book being disorganized. It's Quentin's journal as he sort of, I don't know. And I like stories like this. They're just a little slice. It's not a narrative. It begins on one day of his life. It ends on a day of his life. There's no beginning, middle, end to this story.
And maybe that's like there's no beginning. It's just, hey, here's the middle of my life. It's like picking up somebody's diary and just opening it up to a random page and starting to read. And that doesn't work well for me.
This is the story of Quentin, who is the youngest child. He has an older sister.
Yes, he has an older sister.
He has parents that are still married. There's a grandmother that lives in town. He lives in a university town, and his family is sort of ushered him into this nook of, okay, we don't know what to do with Quentin. He can't keep a job by himself. Well, we have a property. We're going to rent this to university students, and Quentin's going to be the quote-unquote live-in caretaker. So Quentin lives in this house, and they rent to, I think it's almost exclusively exchange students. And I think almost all the exchange students, they are people of color. There's like Egyptian. I can't even remember at this point. Carla.
Yeah, it seems to be largely like Middle East and Indian students.
And so he has this, obviously Quentin, based on Jeffrey Dahmer, is homosexual. Now, here's the thing. Jeffrey Dahmer preyed on mostly underage boys.
That's true.
Now, here's my thing about Jeffrey Dahmer. I did not treat Jeffrey Dahmer, so I don't know. Was Jeffrey Dahmer a pedophile, or was he just opportunistically taking advantage of children because it was easier to get his hands on them and murder them? Or does it even fucking matter if you're engaging in sex with children, you're a pedophile? But here's the thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
I understand your point.
I'm not trying to be a fucking pedophile apologist. He had sex with children and then murdered children and ate him so he can, burn in hell, basically, or whatever.
Dahmer's victims, I don't think he chose them because they were children. And I think maybe that's what you're getting at, and I agree. He didn't select them because they were 14, because he had a very large age range in his victims. A lot of them were 18, 20 years old.
Some of them were older.
I agree with that. I think that he was more of an opportunistic killer. I don't think he was sexually attracted necessarily to the younger ones. I think it was just a matter of, oh, you're there, you're easy to get. Okay, we'll go with this.
And no access to alcohol. Exactly. That was one of Jeffrey Dahmer's big tricks. Hey, come to my apartment and get drunk with me.
Let's smoke a spliff.
Yeah.
Let's drink some beer. I've got drugs. I've got alcohol. Let's watch The Exorcist Part 3. That was his... No, actually, Exorcist Part 3 is really fucking good.
Oh, I was just thinking of the final attempted victim.
Yes.
That's where we got that piece of information.
I loved it. That's an excellent film. Part 2, not so good. Part 3, awesome. But anyways.
My favorite Dahmer fun fact is that he worked in a candy factory.
In a candy factory.
But we're talking about Quentin, not Jeffrey Dahmer. Not that they're the same person.
So Quentin, we get to see inside his mind as he sort of lusts after these boys. And he's very obviously a person who just is withdrawn from life. He doesn't have a sense of responsibility. He wants to be left alone to his pleasures as much as possible. And when we begin the book, his pleasures are being alone in his room, watching television, eating frozen pizza, and jerking off thinking about, whoever's in the house. As we go on, he becomes obsessed with somebody that he sees at a local diner. And this person sort of embodies the all-American Ken doll perspective, and this person is underage, isn't he? He's a high school boy, and I can't even remember. Does it say his real name?
No,
because Quentin talks about some of his past conquests, and he gives everybody nicknames. I guess that's part of his depersonalization. Make it feel like it's not a person that we're
right. And I think the book really follows that evolution of the depersonalization.
So he becomes obsessed with somebody that he decides to call Squirrel. What is it he does? Does he go to the diner and he goes to the bathroom and jerks off into a napkin and then he puts it back on his plate because Squirrel is a busboy, and then he knows that Squirrel has to clear his plate.
Oh shit, I don't even think I made it that far. Now I really need to figure out a way to get through this fucking book.
You missed some good stuff. Your OCD is going to really hate the ending, though.
You have to plow through. Gotta plow through for this. I gotta say, Jeffrey Dahmer's modus operandi of getting people to his house to kill was pretty basic. Hey, you guys want to smoke some weed? You want to drink some beer?
I'm lucky I never ran into a Jeffrey Dahmer in college, because I would definitely go along with any stranger who offered to buy my underage ass beer.
They could be psycho killers.
Look, you can't go drink with anybody. You can't help anybody move a couch.
Don't go to their fucking house.
Don't help anybody with a sailboat.
If someone pops in Exorcist 3, just put your shoes... Don't even put your shoes on. Just get up and say, I'm going to get a beer, and then walk out the front door, and then fucking run. And if the cops pick you up, you don't know who that fucker is. So this actually is set also concurrently in the 70s, 80s era.
Yes.
So there's a distinct lack of cell phones, etc. So Squirrel is ensnared by this completely ridiculous Rube Goldberg machine. Quentin cooks up the most ridiculous fucking scheme that involves a box full of Easter chicks. Isn't that it?
The box of chicks.
The box of Easter chicks, and he lets them loose in an alley and acts like he needs help.
I dropped my chickens.
He becomes intimately familiar with Squirrel's day-to-day life, and he knows what route he's going to take when he drives home.
Yes. We're going to need to stop because I didn't finish this fucking book. Chickens?
Little
Chicks. Like baby, just hatched
Somebody hated it prematurely.
I know. God, I'm regretting that decision.
So Quentin knows exactly where and when Squirrel is going to be.
Read the book, Nancy.
Happens to be waiting in an alley with his truck, and he happens to be like, can you help me pick these up? I got to get my chicks back in this box.
Lights out. Now, I find it interesting, since you mentioned the truck, just something funny in the language of the book that I noticed. He gives the humans nicknames.
Yes.
But he always refers to his own vehicle as the Dodge Ram. He puts more work into describing his own vehicle and is more specific about it than he is actual people.
Every time.
I'd be proud to talk about my Dodge Ram.
Yeah, we are recording in West Virginia, so maybe we should play to our audience.
Something that struck, and this is a direct Jeffrey Dahmer correlation, that if Quentin is hanging out with his grandma, everything is okay. If Quentin's going over there to sit on the couch and drink lemonade and mow her grass, everything is fine. And as a matter of fact, he uses that to build his alibi and gets in his truck and drives over and drops his chicks, gets his squirrel loaded up in the truck, incapacitated, goes back, finishes mowing the grass, and then goes and does what he wants to do. So Quentin has built in his basement, this is a Gary Heidnik correlation here. So we're veering away from the Dahmer and we're going to Gary Heidnik. So in this house that is housing these exchange students, down in the basement layer, he has built an area for him to farm his zombies.
Dahmer did dismember his victims in a crawl space in one of the houses he lived in.
Okay.
But
well, this was grandmother's house, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that's when he lived with grandma. And after grandma, because grandma was like, Jeffrey, you need to get the fuck out of here.
She did kick him out. Too many weird dudes, too many weird smells.
Yes. So I think grandma had a little bit of an inkling that something was wildly veering from the path of normal.
And I know you've talked about it before, though. It's the homophobia blinders. Yeah, and it made the police turn up a blind eye, his own family. Oh, he's weird because he's a queer, not because he's killing anybody.
You guys don't need to worry about nothing. This is just some queer bullshit that's going on. Just he's fine. He's just queer.
But then again, like we mentioned with Dennis Rader in a previous episode, when somebody's a goddamn weirdo, nobody's mind goes to serial killer.
Mine does.
No, it doesn't.
Constantly.
Dude, I worked with a guy that I swear to God, one of these days, I'm going to see him on the news, and it's going to be, he's killed a bunch of people.
My family members probably say that about me.
So anyway, so Quentin brings Squirrel back to his basement for fun and games. He's very disappointed in himself because Quentin's not an overachiever. So he's already had this experiment, 3 times before, I believe? It doesn't work out with Squirrel.
It never works out for them.
It's just like Dahmer. Like, I mean, I really thought if I took a drill bit and I just drilled straight through the temple and poured muriatic acid down in it, that I could create a sex slave that would pleasure me every day.
You mean that doesn't work?
Unfortunately, no. So he has to, unfortunately, say goodbye to Squirrel. And the book just kind of closes with Quentin, beginning of the new school year. Here we go again. Another desultory.
Well, he's always got a little piece of his old lovers with him.
It mirrors the Dahmer thing with the cops. The policemen are going through his home because they suspect him. He's a very suspicious person.
Yes, and Jeffrey Dahmer, for example, was convicted of, the public indecency, public nudity, molesting children.
Connor X and Thasophone, he had been convicted of sexual assault or some related charge of that child's brother.
Yes.
Older brother, 4 years prior to him.
Jeffrey Dahmer killed almost all of his victims while he was on probation.
So he was living in the same, other than the first person he killed, and I think 1 or 2 in his grandmother's home, almost all of his victims he killed while he was living in this one apartment complex.
Yes. And he had 17, but he was convicted of 16.
Something like that.
They couldn't, 15 in Milwaukee and 1 in Ohio.
And since then, people have come forward and said that while he was in the military that he had raped them. So apparently he's also a serial rapist.
Do you think that's true?
I do.
I don't think, oh gosh, Jeff never would have done that. His need to have them be so inanimate. But perhaps that's where it first started.
What I remember, he was inebriated and he restrained them. He tied them up.
Gotcha.
So it very much seems part of the escalation to me, especially considering he'd already killed Stephen Hicks.
He did, yes. He killed his first victim when he was only 18 years old. It's unbelievable.
He attempted to go to college, didn't work out, joined the military, spent most of the time completely shit-faced drunk. So, yeah, it does not surprise me at all.
He spent most of his life from the time he was 13 shit-faced drunk all day, every day.
So we're going to bring this back to the book. So you mean to tell me he never makes his zombie?
We build websites. We build websites. Real good websites.
Cucumber and Company will build, host, and update your site for one low monthly rate, dude. And I ain't just blowing smoke. In Beckley at 304-250-0123 or cucumberandcompany.com.
Joyce Carol Oates.
She reminds me a whole lot, especially in this short story. Flannery O'Connor.
Flannery O'Connor
is what comes to mind when I read her work a lot.
Southern Gothic queen. We'll have to dive into her sometime, guys, because Flannery O'Connor is an American original, and she writes some very bleak, confrontational stuff. So, anyone here read anything else besides this by Oates? No.
No, but I'm about to because I love the style of this book.
I couldn't even read this by Oates. So,
well, the good news is she's very prolific. She's been writing since the 60s. She comes out with something every year, 2, 3 years. Like I said, the only thing that I'd read of hers before was this short story called Where Are You Going? Where Have You Been? And it's very different from this.
Very different and very similar to Flannery O'Connor.
Very similar to O'Connor, which is why, I read Where Are You Going? Where Have You Been? When I was in high school, and it has stuck with me ever since. While Zombie is a very, like I said, passive, desultory, there's a sense of trudging through life, which I think is kind of echoing Dahmer's. These are people that they're wired very differently from us, and they're trying to shove a square peg into a round hole, as it is.
I think that it's just like anything else. Doing something simple is harder.
It is, yes.
And that's what I think about this book. It's written in his voice, so it's very simple.
And that's the point. It's not supposed to be like this. Where are you going? Where have you been? It's very visceral. It's very zippy. It's very crackly. It's about a young girl who is coming into her sexual blossoming. So it's a very different feel from Zombie. And the fact that we can see Oates wrote this was one of her earliest published works, and then 25 years or so later, this is another it speaks to a great range and somebody who has gone through. She is a body of work and a career that encompasses a lot of different voices.
It's true. And I like that. I like that she experiments with style and tone, and you can't necessarily read one of her works and be like, oh, this is her.
Yeah.
I find that interesting.
Yeah.
And the way this book is structured is like a journal, like we were talking about. So the chapters vary greatly in length. It's Some of it's kind of reminiscent of like William Faulkner and the infamous "My Mother Was a Fish,"
Yes.
the one sentence chapter.
Yes.
She gets pretty close to that, but I think this is an example of what I was talking about with the simplicity actually being like poetic and the misused punctuation on purpose.
Yes. And I like that. I like someone who's not afraid to stretch their legs and just go ahead and create a visual on the page. There's a poet named Russell Edson, and he writes sort of like prose poems that are meant to be not just read and heard, but you're supposed to absorb how they look on the page, and it kind of reminds me of that.
Yes.
And he's contemporary to her about the same time as she was beginning writing.
But see, maybe that's where I'm different, because I can, like, if it's poetry that's written in free verse or it's written in anything like that, I can appreciate it. I can love it. I can enjoy it. But when it's a novel and when it's something that I'm supposed to read as a story, I can't do it.
You know what it reminds me of? It's like in The Stand when they're writing from the perspective of the trash can man.
Yes.
Yes, very much like that. I don't know, Nate, you just gotta, I think you just have to be in the right mood. Maybe you're just too busy right now.
And maybe that's it. Maybe I've got too much going on in life, and maybe it was the setting that I was in. Maybe it's because I was surrounded by a bunch of fucking Cub Scouts and their Cub Scout shit.
No, that's no time to approach something. And I think that there's some texts that I've approached in life and I've just been like, I can't get into this. And then later when I finally broke through whatever that barrier was, and I'm like, oh, I see why this work is important. I see why this is something that changed people's perspectives.
I will make a pledge right here for everyone to hear. Nancy Bell will give this book a second chance. I will try. I paid for the motherfucker, so I should probably try to read it all.
I'm about to convince you right now with chapter 47. Are you ready?
Chapter 47.
Do bones float? And if so, but no flesh is attached, and the bones themselves scattered and lost to one another, what identity is there? I never think of it.
Okay, now see, hearing you read that just turned me the fuck on. So
This book will turn you on. It's one of those books that makes you do that, which is, like you were saying, good art evokes a reaction. You might read it and be like, okay, Carla, there's pretty lines in there, but it's still a piece of shit. All right.
maybe what I need to do is maybe it's also reading it digitally, because yes, even though on my Kindle, like as you're flipping through, I noticed that the images and shit are on there, and yes, the images are there on my Kindle as well, but maybe it's the difference between holding it in a Kindle versus holding that paper copy that you're holding right now. And maybe if I tried to read it from that paper copy,
I agree.
I could be able to appreciate it more.
I agree.
I do like my Kindle, but I read it more for popcorn novels and like YA fiction that I like. If I'm trying to read a serious work, I still like to feel the paper. Now, I will tell you all that if you want to read Where Are You Going, Where Have You Been, it's only 9 pages if you print it. It's available in a PDF format, and it is chilling. It is just as chilling as Zombie. It's one of those that is taught in schools, and their debate, for me, obviously, he's Satan. Don't you think?
You think he's the devil?
Yes, the whole thing about his boots and how his boots are like lined, it's because he's got hooves. He won't walk in the yard. He's leaning against the car the whole time, and when he moves and his boot lays on the ground, he's embarrassed and he pulls his boot back up. It's because he's got fucking goat legs.
There are hints of that. His hair's a wig.
Yes, and like it says that it's like his face is a mask, like he put makeup on but forgot his throat. There are all these hints that there's something underneath this sort of facade that he's presenting, and she can't really tell how old he is. Oh, he's 30, oh, he's 18 or whatever. There are enough hints to me that this is some kind of metaphysical thing that I think it's meant to be read that way. So that's me. What was your take on it?
I didn't really get that he was the devil. And honestly, I think the point of the story, it doesn't really matter if he's the devil or not.
It doesn't.
It kind of goes back to a point you were discussing in episode 3. Like, everyone wants to think they're a superhero. That's what strikes me when I read that story. The capturing of the complete sense of helplessness another person can make you feel just by threatening her and threatening her family. He gets her to not run, not call the police.
I am, Penny's got the printout, and I haven't read the story, but I'm kind of glancing over it as they're talking. I'm not going to lie. One line that just jumped out at me, and, she's talking to who I assume you're referring to as the devil, Penny, and you're referring to as, maybe the devil, maybe not.
The character's name is Arnold Friend.
Arnold Friend. He's your friend.
And he says to her, yes, I'm your lover. You don't know what that is, but you will. I know that too. I know all about you. But look, it's real nice, and you couldn't ask for nobody better than me or more polite. I'll always keep my word. I'll tell you how it is. I'm always nice at first, the first time. I'll hold you so tight you won't think you have to try to get away or pretend anything, because you know you can't. And I'll come inside you where it's all secret, and you'll give in to me and you'll love me. I just got fucking chill.
This is astounding to me. She was so young when she wrote this, and like old Carlita was saying, this is not necessarily her voice, but she was next door to this when she wrote this. She was, maybe a decade away from the age, because this girl, the character, is like 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we're younger, I'm older now, but I still kind of remember being a young person and remembering coming into my sexuality and feeling that kind of power that you have with it, and also the vulnerability that comes with being a sexual being and a young woman. And this story knocked me on my fucking ass. Like, I remember where she picks the phone up and she screams into the phone because she can't bring herself to dial the number. It's kind of like the big bad wolf, like, your house is made of matchsticks, I could blow it away. He tells her to put her hand on her heart and feel her heart beating, and that doesn't mean anything because he has so much power over her.
Yes. And he seems supernatural. However, don't you think Charles Manson seemed like that to the girls that he controlled?
To an unworldly young woman, yes. To somebody that's sitting, it's set in the summer between whatever year and whatever year of school, and it's just this time of waiting and time of like ripening and waiting for something to happen, and then things happen and it's not necessarily what you wanted to happen.
Well, and I think part of why this is speaking to me, and let me get personal for a minute because I've been drinking and I can do that. I
can edit around anything.
I mean, I'm very much the type of person that up until recently, I've never attached emotion to sex. And that's because I had a man when I was young. Oh, man, Jesus fucking Christ, a boy. Use me for sex because he knew he could. He knew that I couldn't say no to him because I was, quote unquote, so in love with this boy. These are things that he would say to me. There's the things that I heard. And it's hard for me to reread them because, I'm angry.
And he says to her over and over again, be nice. Be nice, honey. Listen to me. You don't want to do that because if you do that, then I have to be mean.
After a while, she could hear again. She was sitting on the floor with her wet back against the wall. Arnold Friend was saying from the door, "That's a good girl. Just put the phone back."
What I love about this story, it's 9 pages, and you will not find a bunch of 3 and 4 syllable words in it. It's her wet back against a wall, and it speaks volumes, and you just... his boots. You got to read this over again and tell me what you think when it talks about his posture, his gait, and his boots. Because that is what's telling me that he has fucking hooves and he's the fucking devil. She sort of backs up from speaking to him. This speaks to domesticity to me. The kitchen looked like a place she'd never seen before. Some room she had run inside, but that wasn't good enough, wasn't going to help her. The kitchen window had never had a curtain after 3 years, and there were dishes in the sink for her to do. And if you ran your hand across the table, you'd probably feel something sticky there. So that to me is such a creepy passage. It's about domesticity. It's about what kind of chores you're supposed to do as a woman, and like
her failings as a woman.
Her failings as a woman, and also that about anytime you something sticky there, that's also a sexual reading to me. If the place got lit up with fire, honey, you'd come running out into my arms, right into my arms, and safe at home, like you knew I was your lover, and stop fooling around. I don't mind a nice shy girl, but I don't like no fooling around. I recommend both texts to you.
It depends on what you like.
It does. We have a fantastic live show, and Nancy Bell will be joining us. We will be at the V Club Thursday, April 26th, 7 p.m. sharp. We've got burlesque, belly dance, sideshow. We've got fantastic music. We've got raffles all night. A lot of really great artisans are donated to that, and you will have many chances to win all night. That concludes the fantastic 4th episode of Indifferently Depraved Book Club. We'll see you next time.
It's time to kill. Got me, girl. She's my world. Got me. got me feeling it's gonna